oh, if I date for fun, I'm a horrible human being. And then if I'm dating, then, oh, we can't hold hands and we can't kiss and anything like that. And if we cross the line, oh, I'm such a horrible human being. And then when they get married, all of a sudden they're expected to flip the switch and now become sexual beings again. I understand why they tried to do it, but I don't think that's necessarily the solution. There needs to be some other way other than just purity of thought, purity, and then abstaining from everything. And then comes the unreasonable expectation of becoming very sexually healthy when you become married. When I counsel some people and they were telling me like, I had a lot of sexual problems in marriage because psychologically their brain just kind of shut off for many, many years. And then how am I expected to turn that part on again just because I'm married now? The church message about sexuality has definitely impacted our view of ourselves. It has and then it has impacted marriages today. These are things that I think we should probably address early, like in middle school and high school even.
Hi, this is your host, Minli. I'm excited to bring you a mental health series, Let's Talk 말하기. I'm super excited to have Roy Kim. He's self-described as broker between the addict, the betrayed, and the divorced, and the church. Whoa, that's a lot. Can you please explain to me what that means?
Yes. Those, especially with sexual addiction, which is what I specialize in my professional work, they tend to completely hide themselves within church communities who messed up. Or maybe the church will look down on me because I divorced. And sadly, there are many churches who don't know what to do with divorced people. I feel just really badly for all three of those demographics. And so I tried to write, I tried to podcast about those issues so that we can increase our helpful language between those four parties. And I would say since that time, maybe 75% of my clinical work involves helping people learn how to move away from pornography viewing, payment for sex, chronic infidelity, those kinds of issues that really destroy the self and destroy the relationships. It's even though it's hard work, I find it's kind of like a calling for me because there's just there's not many Asian American Christians who specialize in that, but there's many clients out there, like potential clients out there who need that kind of help, but most of the professionals who are doing that work are Caucasian, and maybe half of them are Christian and half of them are not, but still, like there's a kind of a comfort when you can go see a professional and that professional knows your culture
Yeah.
and they look like you. So I really wish that there will be more Asian American and Korean American Christians, men and women, who can do this work.
Roy, I think for Asian people in general, sexuality is something very, very hard to talk about, isn't
Oh,
it?
yes,
Yeah.
almost impossible.
Yeah. So I could understand why there are so few of therapists who specializes in these topics or
Yeah,
areas, and also you just want to avoid it.
of course.
Yeah.
And so it will usually take some crisis for them to reach out for help. If it's just kind of like a problem, but it hasn't reached emergency time yet, then they'll probably just chamo,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but
That's with any type of
yeah,
mental issues,
that's
right?
true.
Yeah, mental health issues. We just don't like go seek therapy or help. We just
Right.
chamo
Yeah,
everything.
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, hoping that it'll go away.
Yeah. And then when they not just the chamo, and then but then they also keep it a secret from
Mm,
their family members.
mhm,
And then that's when the spouse feels the betrayal, like you deceived me.
mhm.
You know, because with some other mental health issue, maybe they can see that their spouse is depressed. They can see that their spouse has had some kind of a manic episode. But then with the sexual addiction, if they have been watching pornography in secret, they can continue to keep that a secret for a long, long time. And then that's where the betrayal comes because they realize, like, wow, you've been lying to me for years, and they couldn't catch it.
Even just in church, in
Hmm.
Christian community,
Yeah.
it is such a serious, real problem,
Yes.
but we just don't talk about it, and we just want to pretend that it doesn't exist for us.
Yes.
Or people say, "Oh, just pray hard, pray harder, pray
Oh,
harder."
yeah, I know.
Well, not to expose anybody,
Yeah.
but there was someone in the community that a pastor
Mm.
really had a lifelong addiction to pornography,
I'm
right?
not surprised. Hmm.
Yeah, and it's not a unique case, I don't think.
Hmm.
But I was flabbergasted when
Mm.
this was exposed,
Mm.
and the pastors around him were giving advice to the wife, saying, "Oh, he'll get over it. You have to chamo. You have to
Oh,
understand. This is like all the guys. This is a man thing." Um, and so I was shocked and actually angry at
yes.
these well-known pastors are saying, giving this advice.
Yes. Yes. And it's kind of I feel like it's kind of a hypocrisy too, because um, the they might say, hey, all men do it, and then just wait, and it'll sort out eventually.
Hmm.
But then if they find out that someone else in the congregation is doing some other kind of sin, they may not give that same advice to that person. They might actually use language that shames that person.
Mm,
So I don't think that's fair, you know.
yeah.
You mentioned this is a big problem in the church. There's actually statistics that support that.
Mm,
Um, there was a research study where Christians were anonymously given a survey about their pornography use and then their role in the church. And then men in the church, they self-report around 60% of the men use pornography as kind of habitually. They viewed it habitually. About 25% of women, same thing. So
hmm.
even though it's less than the men, it's still a pretty big problem for women too.
Yeah.
And then roughly 50 to 55% of pastors habitually viewed porn. So when you say it's a big problem in the church, it's probably a bigger problem than um, most other unhealthy behaviors in amongst regular people,
Hmm.
and yet it's the problem that is least addressed
Hmm.
because of the shame.
Yeah.
And then when this problem um, does not get talked about, it's not as if the problem goes away, and usually it gets worse. And then that's when we have scandals and we have real big explosions of you know, marriage conflict and things like that, and people have to resign, and then it's become so terrible. And so we do need to address it head on, and that's why I feel like it's an important um, calling to be
Mm,
like a broker for this topic,
yeah.
because you know, if I don't continually speak into this issue, then who is going to speak to the Korean American churches about this? We need not just me, but we need a lot more people to speak into this issue.
Or you are a ordained pastor
Yes, I'm an ordained
bef-
pastor.
before you became a therapist.
That's right.
So what led you to pivot to becoming a therapist?
Yeah, that's another story. Yes. So back when I was still in seminary and about to graduate, I was actually thinking of becoming a full-time missionary.
Mm.
And then, of course, the irony is that that's when I met a woman,
Mhm.
in seminary during my last semester at seminary. And
Right?
then we ended up dating, and then eventually we ended up marrying. Um, and then after about 4 or 5 years, she ended up betraying me with someone at our church. And um, I was the pastor at that time, so
Oh.
basically she had an affair with someone that was one of my congregation members. And um, it was just uh, the experience was maybe one of the most horrible things that someone can go through. And then I questioned everything. I questioned um, myself. I questioned God. I questioned the church. And then there was no real road of reconciliation between us because I didn't feel like she was making the effort to build trust with me again. And that coincided with a time when I was already starting to question how long how long can I pastor? Um, I, you know, um, I felt like every year that went by that I was pastoring, I was losing my energy for pastoring. And I started getting really scared because like this is all that I know. As a pastor, I do some counseling and I actually enjoyed it, but I don't know what it's like to do like professional counseling. So I ended up taking a step of faith, and then I entered into graduate school to learn clinical counseling. And I realized that clinical counseling is very different than pastoral counseling. And 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 that's uh and it was around that time that, all this stuff unfolded between, my ex-wife and me, and we ended up divorcing back then. And um but I think it was kind of a gift from God. Even though the divorce was traumatic, I think God gave me the gift of mm, finding a career that kind of matches my personality. And then he also gave me like really great friends in that graduate school that um, helped me to feel like stable again, because I was like all over the place, mentally all over the place, emotionally all over the place. And and they really helped me to get stabilized and then even excited about my future eventually. But it took a while to get there.
I mean, I could imagine divorce for anybody is traumatic,
Yes,
a
usually is.
devastating experience, but for a Christian pastor,
Yeah,
I
the
mean,
can there's not that many stories where the 사모님, is the one that's having the affair with someone at your church, right?
that's
Like,
right. Oh my goodness.
you think about like sometimes the gossip that goes around and they say, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe this 사모님, did this," that kind of thing. And I was like, it's not just anyone's story. It's like, I can't believe it's my story, you
Yeah.
know? Um, so yeah, it was devastating, and I had so many disappointments with the head 목사님 and some of the elders. It just this is one of my motivations to be a broker, because
Mm.
many pastors and elders need guidance. They don't
Yeah.
know what
To
to
do.
do. They're just so filled with awkwardness and shame, so they just kind of they it's just, how do you say, just 어색해.
Yeah,
You know?
for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
어색해.
yeah,
And then so
yeah,
they don't know what to do, and so that
yeah.
makes it worse, you
They
know?
don't know what to say, or
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
what do I do with this little
Yeah,
potato, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh
Yeah.
wow. Oh wow.
My
Yeah,
my head
you're. Mhm.
pastor, even though he found out what happened, he didn't reach out to me, not even one time. Yeah. So I was thinking, oh, am I, do I have that kind of relationship with you that when
Oh,
I'm going through this kind of tragedy that you don't
oh,
even reach out to me, you know? So it was very disappointing, and it left a very bad taste in my mouth. Yeah.
I mean, why is that, you think?
Um, and I wonder whether he's alone. I bet you there are quite a few other pastors who have the same kind of behavior. They just,
Yes.
you know, because my theory is that if if he I think most pastors, they want to help, and they want to make sure that what they're in their attempt to help, that it actually is helping, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you attempt it and then the person rejects it or makes you look bad, then you feel bad about yourself. So
Mm-hmm.
I feel like because he doesn't know what to do, rather than try to help and me tell him, no, 목사님, I don't want that kind
Mm-hmm.
of help, that he doesn't want to face that kind of embarrassment. So better safe to just kind of, not try in the first place. That's one of my theories.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's roots from selfishness of some
It,
sort.
I
No?
think so. I think it is selfish
Mm-hmm.
because, no matter what, like, it's not about performance. It's about love,
Yeah.
like how do
Yeah.
you actually attempt to love somebody,
Right.
um, rather than wondering, oh no, is this going to go badly, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like parents these days are getting better with more
Mm-hmm.
education, Korean parents.
Mm-hmm.
But back in the day, no one was educating our parents about how to empathize and how to, you know, be very emotionally present with the kids because they were too busy and that kind of thing. So I don't
Yeah.
really blame them, but I think what that does is it made our generation um, feel kind of like um, guide guideless. Like we don't have a role model for how to deal with people's pain and things like that. We have to kind of learn it by ourselves. And then when now that we are in these church spaces, or even with our own friends, if we don't really know, we've never really learned, except maybe watching TV,
Mm-hmm.
how these white people on TV are, doing these things, then we don't know what to do, you
Right.
know. So I feel like the reason why some white people are better at the the empathy is maybe
Mm-hmm.
because their parents already learned a little bit and they know how to
Mm-hmm.
model that for them when they were children, you know.
Mm, good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you watch the white people on the TV, and the parents saying, "Oh, sweetheart, are
Yeah,
you
sweet.
okay?" and we look at
Like
our parents
sweetheart.
going, "What?"
It's like, what's sweetheart?
One of my guests mentioned that because the kids don't have any cushion when they come home to
Mm,
release this tension and stress that they experience during the day, and they come
yes.
home and there's no cushion. We grew up like that, like
Mm,
pushing things aside,
yeah,
um, just kind of self-sufficiency.
sure.
You gotta be strong, you gotta, don't be weak. So a lot of these things, um, even if I was experiencing infidelity or addiction of any kind, I would not know what to do. I would not be
Totally.
seeking therapy because that's just not what we do.
Right.
I would not be talking to my pastor because you just don't know what's going to get around. I would
Yeah.
not be talking to my friend, definitely,
Yeah.
in the church.
Hmm.
So I feel like we're all kind of fragmented in the church
Yes.
on our own,
I think that's true.
alone.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. I think that's the sad reality for, I think, most Korean Americans Christians or Asian American Christians. We have a lot of work to do. I think this kind of a podcast forum is one way to kind of chip away at that problem. Um, you know, more Asian American Christian therapists need to write, and they need to do, videos that churches can watch and learn. At least maybe if we don't completely transform this generation, then we do it for the sake of the next generation, you know.
Mm, mm-hmm.
That way we have maybe about 30 years of development and progress so that the next generation can be even more capable of dealing with this kind of stuff than we are. So yeah, we have a lot of work to do.
Yeah, yes, we do. We do. I was a speaker at a youth conference many years ago, and
Mhm.
then there was time when some Korean pastor, youth pastor, was having inappropriate sexual relationship
Oh
with the youth
no.
member, right?
Oh.
And it was a big news. And then, because at the conference, we're collecting we're doing Q&A sessions, and
Hmm.
one teenager wrote
Hmm.
this question. What do you think about this? And one of the pastors, and he's a Korean American pastor, therapist. He said, "Oh, we should not talk about this."
Oh my goodness.
He
Why?
said
What's his reason?
his reason was, well, not everybody knows about this issue, so let's not bring it up. And I was the only woman in that group, and I said, no, 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 we need to talk about this. He was a more senior pastor, and
Uh-huh.
so he people decided not to mention that. But guess what? We
Hmm.
had a live Q&A session, and
Hmm.
she asked that same exact question.
Good, good. That pastor, um, his response is part of the systemic problem, that maybe because of his discomfort or he
Mm,
wants to protect other people from discomfort. Um, Again, it sounds very Korean to me,
yeah, yeah.
but at the same time, we shouldn't just keep everything the same just because it's Korean. If
Hmm.
there's something that is causing damage, we should address it, and
Hmm.
even if it's not a Korean way of doing things.
Right.
And I think I'm thinking primarily about the victims. The more that we shine a light on this and talk about it in a very uncomfortable way, the closer that we get to doing something that actually helps the victims. We spend way too much time focusing on the perpetrator. That's not just in Korean circles, but even just like, with Epstein and all that kind of stuff. We
Yeah.
focus way too much energy on the perpetrator, and we have to provide more and more resources for the victim because um, they deserve to have a full life again.
Yeah.
But if no one is attending to them and helping them to heal in the proper way, then what's their future? The perpetrators can go ahead and continue to live their sinful life, but but the victims don't have that luxury. So yes, I think it's right that that woman repeated her question in the Q&A. And I think hopefully more people follow that example because every church needs to talk about this and have procedures. The elders and the pastors, they should be accountable for their own sexual sins, and they should be able to talk about it in a way that um, reduces this kind of damage in the church. It's a really, really big problem, and we
Yeah.
can't solve it by being silent about it.
Right. Right. Do you think, the way we were taught in the church about sexuality, homosexuality, lust, what else is there? All these things
Yeah,
really impact on how we see ourselves as a
sure.
human being.
Yes. Yes, I
We're
agree
only
with that.
humans, right? With
Yes.
these feelings and desires and
Yeah.
yeah. What do you say to that?
Well, I mean, one example immediately comes to my mind is uh, I grew up I remember in the 90s there was the purity culture, and people made promises, things, I will never do any sort of sexual sin, I will stay away from all these things. And so I think maybe I understand the intent, because it
Mhm.
felt like, oh, if people are not vigilant, then they're just going to be promiscuous and that kind of thing. I understand that.
Mhm.
But I think um, it was very short-sighted, because I think mm, most Christian leaders didn't realize that if they give this kind of direction, um, and really not monitor how the students were receiving that teaching, what they ended up doing was they felt like, when they had like natural desires, natural sexual desires for other people, even as a teenagers, they would just shut it down. They would just really hate the fact that they were feeling sexual desires
Yeah.
for other people. And then all of a sudden, when you get used to hating not just your sexual desire, but you start to hate yourself for having the sexual desires. They continue that in college, like, oh no, like, yes, I should be dating for marriage. That was the big catchphrase back then,
Right.
dating for marriage. And then, not just dating for fun. Oh, if I date for fun, I'm a horrible human being. And then if I'm dating, then, oh, we can't hold hands and we can't kiss and anything like that. And if we cross the line, oh, I'm such a horrible human being. And then when they get married, all of a sudden they're expected to flip the switch and now become sexual beings again. You
Mhm.
know, it's just a really weird um, way of thinking about our sexuality that um, that I understand why they try to do it, but I don't think that's necessarily the solution. There needs to be some other way other than just purity of thought, purity, 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 and then abstaining from everything. And then comes the unreasonable expectation of becoming very sexually healthy when you become married. When I
Yeah.
when I counsel some people and they were telling me like,
Mhm.
I had a lot of sexual problems in marriage because psychologically their brain just kind of shut off for many, many years. And then how am I expected to turn that part on again just because I'm married now? I said, that makes sense to me. Like, it's um it doesn't work like that, you know? So not that I have like a definite answer to this problem, but I think we should talk about it. I think we should be more nuanced in the way that we talk about it, so that it's not just avoid sin, avoid sex, don't talk about it, that kind of stuff. It's not very helpful. So yes, it has definitely, the church message about sexuality has definitely impacted our our view of ourselves. And then it has impacted marriages today. Uh, and it's these are things that I think we should probably address early, like in middle school and high school even.
I have certifications from many, many years ago on teaching purity and sexuality, right? Because I
Mm,
was required by my work at the time.
mm,
And like, I don't know, I was not really completely sold on the idea, but I had to do it. After that, some churches have asked me to come and talk to their youth group about sexuality and purity. And I did it a few times. But while I was doing it, I was like, I really hate myself for saying these things. Like, what am I talking about? Why am I saying these things? So,
it's like a betrayal of
yeah,
yourself, yeah.
it's like, does it really make sense? Do these kids
Oh,
look like they're receiving this message? No. They're like, oh my God, what is she talking about, that ajumma? So I stopped doing it. I said, even if the invitation comes, I said, I don't, no, I don't do that
yeah,
anymore, right?
yeah,
Because
yeah,
I
right.
just didn't like the message. And well, then what do I say? Like, explore your sexuality? No, but so I didn't know what to say, so I stopped doing it.
Right.
Um, and still some people ask me, oh, can you talk to my teenager about, I'm like, no, you need to find another counselor. But what my daughter said to me,
Uh-huh.
she was a teenager at the time.
Mm-hmm.
She said, all these sex educations, even at school,
Mm-hmm.
they talk about the function, the things, the behaviors, but
Yes.
they never mention anything about the emotions, the
Yes, she's right.
so yeah, I said, wow, that's really amazing that you
Yeah.
mentioned that. So
Mm.
that really made me think twice about what was preached or presented, right, at
Yes.
schools and churches.
Yes, I
Uh,
agree.
the other thing that really spoke to me in one of your articles that you wrote was internalized racism,
Mm.
how you view as a Asian American teenager boy,
Yep.
particularly,
Mm-hmm.
paved your way of unhealthy sexual identity or
Yes.
self-identity even,
Sure.
right?
Sure. Right. Right. Yeah. I grew up in the Bay Area during a time. These days, of course, the Bay Area is full of Asian American people. Um, but when I was growing up in the 70s and 80s in the Bay Area, it was very, very white. My elementary school was white, high school was white. Um, so and everything that I watched on TV was white. All the magazines were everything's white,
Mm-hmm,
right?
mm-hmm,
So um, I wanted to be white.
sure.
Um, when I saw even like teen romance on TV, these were a white boy and a white girl, and and I was very attracted to, white girls because that's all there was.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
So as I gradually developed the internalized racism, which basically means I was hating my own race. Um, I started to dislike the language. I started to dislike my name. My last name is Kim. It's like people said, "Oh, your last name is a girl's name." I said, "Oh man, like
mm-hmm.
why do I need to have this Kim last name, right?" And then, my food that my mom lovingly prepared for me, I started to reject it because it was different than everyone else's food. So I wanted her to give me sandwiches instead, that kind of thing. Like, it's just so 못됐어.
We all went through that, right?
Yeah. And then, as I started to like girls, hitting puberty and everything, well, the girls didn't like me back, you know. So uh, the girls liked white boys. The white girls liked white boys. Even the Asian girls liked the white boys. Um, so I was just thinking, there's really nothing that I can do other than to hate myself and to ask God why. Like, why was I Korean? Why is my family Korean? And for a lot of people who grow up with that kind of powerlessness and the frustration, um, that that level of self-hatred starts to uh, go towards a path of fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, okay, sometimes the fantasy was more like playing with my toys and video games, that kind of thing. But the other fantasy, especially started as I started to develop, even sexually, was to fantasize about girls. Whether it's through R-rated movies, whether it was pornographic magazines, things like that. And so I would um, in my and I didn't even know that I was doing it at the time, but it was looking back, it was my form of self-comfort that um that I was consoling myself for being um uh unlovable, unattracted, unattractive
Mm-hmm.
to the girls that I knew, and also even like, I knew that I had no chance with like celebrities or anything like that. So fantasy was the only place that can feel that I was sexually attractive and wanted by someone, even just in my own head. And this is actually the experience of a lot of people that I'm working with professionally, is that they go into these fantasies, whether it's because of internalized racism, whether it's because of domestic violence, whether it's because of feeling that their parents didn't give them any attention, um, rejected by girls or guys at school, they would just enter into fantasy. And then when you do that, it becomes kind of like an emotional survival strategy, but then it stays secret, and then it becomes a habit because you do it so often. And then the problem is we then take that child adolescent fantasy into adulthood. And then that's when we get into real trouble because we don't know how to get out of that fantasy, and we keep the secrets, and now our partner feels so betrayed by us. So that's how my internalized racism turned into like sexual fantasizing for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm sure it's not rare. I mean, it's not just you. So many boys, so many men, right? Especially, I mean, I don't know, maybe things are a little bit better these days because the Asian culture or Korean culture particularly is so well received and popular. But I see so many, especially the boys, teenage boys, when
Mm.
they're going through all these very complex and confusing times, on top of that, they exactly like you said, are not attractive.
Mm.
The girls go for the white boys or the athletes or, not especially the nerds or
Yeah.
whatever, right? That we are
Yeah.
categorized, right?
Yes.
So, and people that I know who have lifelong addictions, sexual addictions, particularly with pornography, um, share very similar stories.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's true.
yeah.
And the statistics also show, there's actually statistics for things like eHarmony and
Mm.
uh,
Tinder.
Hinge and
Uh-huh,
Tinder, things
uh-huh,
like
uh-huh.
that. They compile all the data when it comes to the ethnic percentages, and who is seeking whom. And Asian men are the least sought after. You can do the check the boxes. Who are you
Mm-hmm,
open
mm-hmm,
to dating?
mm-hmm.
Caucasian, Black, Hispanic, Native American, Middle
Right.
Eastern, and then Asian men. Asian men are the least,
Mm,
whereas Asian women are pretty high up there, because, white men like Asian women, Black men like Asian
mm,
women, Hispanic men but then um, white women don't choose Asian men,
right.
Hispanic women don't choose Asian men, so on and so forth. So
Mm-hmm,
when the statistics actually support what the Asian men are already feeling, that they are the least desired, and the only, quote unquote chance
mm-hmm,
is another Asian woman wanting them.
mm-hmm,
But there's a lot of competition because
mm-hmm.
all the other races, they like the Asian women too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
So let's talk about as a pastor, as an
Hmm.
ordained pastor, as a therapist, and as a male, right? These things are very much reality of our community. So instead of saying, oh, they'll grow out of it or it gets better or, work itself out,
Yes.
what can church do? How
Mm.
can we help?
Okay. Uh, as soon as you ask the question,
Uh-huh.
I have an immediate answer. Um, the leadership needs to share their sexual struggle.
Oh.
That is the number one answer, is
Open and
because
wide?
is because um, the congregation will follow the culture that the leadership establishes.
Mm-hmm.
It's asking too much for the layperson to be the first person that opens up. It's asking too much. They are at the bottom of the hierarchy, you know.
Yeah.
It's the leadership that needs to take their own step of faith, and they need to maybe trust in the gospel culture that they are trying to establish in the church, and say, the Lord is with me as well. The Lord loves me, and the Lord wants me to solve my problem as well. And I need to take a stand, and I need to say that this issue is not just for you people over there, but this issue is for me too. You know, it's a big challenge that I'm verbalizing here, but it's the most logical answer I can come up with. It's the most practical answer. And I know that many pastors feel like this will be career suicide for them if they are to say, yes, I have a problem with porn too. You know, I have a problem with objectifying people and lusting after, you know, whatever. But I tell you, there will be a revolution in our churches if that percentage increases. The percentage of pastors and elders, people who are in leadership, who can say, I need help with this too. It will make so many people feel safe to say, oh my gosh, like, 목사님, thank you for saying that. You know, like I thought I was the only one. But now that you said it, and maybe even like the pastor, the 목사님 is going to be involved in like maybe a 12-step group, you know, at church or something like that. Or the they hire a consultant or workshop trainer to come to their church, and the 목사님's there in the front row, and the 목사님's asking questions too. Can you imagine what kind of effect that will have on the people, right? It's like
Right.
it will be it will be revolutionary. Now, maybe in some first generation churches, the congregation will say, we have to kick him out. We have to kick out this pastor because they put too much emphasis on the holiness of the pastor, that's his professional job, is to be holy. And if he doesn't do a good job with being professionally holy, then they got to kick him out and bring in a new person. Maybe first generation is that kind of way, but but in more kind of a westernized, people who understand a little bit more about live in Western culture more, I think they can actually respect the humility of a pastor or a leader who also says, this is my issue too, and I think we need to tackle this together, you know. So that's my immediate answer.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense, but I don't know if
You
I'll
know,
ever see
I'm
that
kind of
in my
doubtful
lifetime.
too. I'm
Yeah.
kind of doubtful too. But
hmm
but they need to hear it, that's
hmm
what's most effective.
You did say that the sex addiction recovery may be the most urgent ministry in the church. What did you mean by that?
What I mean by that is, if we go back to the statistics that roughly 60% of men, around 25% of women, and 55% of pastors are engaging in this habitually, it's becoming a problem for them. This is the kind of issue that will eventually come to the surface. Think about that percentage that I mentioned. Those folks are in those ministries. So the porn issue and the payment for sex, all that kind of stuff, they are within the missions ministries, they are within the marriage ministries, they are within the homeless ministries. And eventually it's going to come to the surface. This issue is so urgent because people are trying to do these other ministries while telling secrets, while keeping secrets, and doing these things that are destroying like the very framework of those ministry structures. Can you imagine if the marriage ministry leader also has their own like prostitution problem or
Yeah.
massage parlor problem, and now they have to explain
Mm-hmm.
to all the marriage ministry participants why they're having a divorce is because of their sexual addiction. And yet they're the ones who are trying to teach these people, the participants, about a healthy marriage while they're keeping secrets in their own marriage. It's a hypocrisy,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so I'd much rather people focus on treating the sexual addiction problem, so that they actually bring their authentic self to the marriage ministry and the missions ministry and the homeless ministry. I think that's a better priority, because otherwise we're just pretending. We're doing the good works of those things, but our soul and our mind is distracted by these lustful things, and the conflict between the husband and the wife and all that kind of stuff. And it's I feel like the priorities are backwards.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Yeah. Because we are sexual beings.
Yes. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we should be honest about this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
It's heartbreaking. Yeah, because it affects so many people and the church at large, right? Because
Yes.
when our leaders are not healthy, we are affected. And of course, the other way around as well.
And the witness is that when people on the outside of the church, they hear about another scandal, another sexual scandal in the church, they're like, you church people, you speak such high language, and you judge homosexuals and you judge other people, but you don't even know how to have your own heterosexual healthy marriage.
Yeah.
Like you're a bunch of hypocrites.
Yeah.
And that's why our witness is so poor, is because we pretend like we have all this, goodness about us, and we are so judgmental to people on the outside, and then everybody's watching.
Yeah.
And they're waiting to see what happens. And when inevitably the scandal comes because no one is addressing the sexual addiction,
Yeah.
then the witness of the church gets worse and worse.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's sad because even for me, when I hear about some sort of a big Christian leader falling because of sexual addiction or the habits, I'm not even surprised.
I'm not surprised too. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Because we're human beings and we have desires. And also because I've seen so many in my lifetime of these things really playing out in the Christian community. So I think what you're saying is that rather than hiding it, let's bring it out to the light.
Yes.
Right? And I'm so honored and grateful that we are able to have a very honest conversation about this topic. There are so many more. I have so many more questions, but
maybe we
we're
can
gonna have
save
to
for another
save it.
time.
Yes, for sure. I hope that we might get in trouble by some people in the community, but I hope that at least this episode will help people start thinking about, hey, what is the language that I want to use to talk about this issue? How can we stop pretending like it doesn't exist and help one another, right?
Yes,
Encourage
right.
one another, build up
Right.
one another. Isn't that what God wants?
Yeah, I think so. And my expectation is not that everybody would think like me, but I hope that anyone who's listening realizes that there are different opinions out there.
Yeah.
I'm one of those people that may be very different opinion than another Korean American person, and that even though we are kind of we are known to be kind of a homogeneous society, but still, it's okay for Korean American people to have different opinions about things. We are different, unique individuals.
Yes. How scary that is to have a different opinion.
Yeah. Yes, I know. I know.
Yeah. So tell us about your private practice. How can people reach out to you?
So I have a private practice that's mostly online therapy within the state of California. It's called New Legacy Family Counseling. And the website is newlegacycounseling.com. And um, I'm also doing some corporate coaching and like nonprofit and educational coaching that involves, of all things, Legos. Trainings using the Legos are very, very interactive and fun and stimulating. So that's why that training model was developed by Lego Corporation to help businesses learn different
Wow.
ways of training. So
Okay.
I do that as well, and so that website is called seriousplayground.org if you want to check that out too.
I will check it out. Yeah.
Yeah,
I hope we have another chance to talk about other rebellious topics.
yeah, I'd be very open
Yeah.
to talk about the more rebellious the topic, the better.